There's a lot of people that I work with are going for like the classic investment banking, M&A, ECM, DCM. But let's get it from the expert. What is sales and trading in plain English?
Yeah, so sales and trading is you are the liaison between your investment bank and the buy side client, which is the institutional investor, which in public markets, it's going to be the hedge fund or the mutual fund or pension fund. And either as a salesperson or as a trader, you have one of two roles, right? You're either acting as a salesperson, you're acting in an advisory capacity. Okay, so what are you doing in an advisory capacity? You are giving investment advice to your institutional client. And this is hard because this is a sophisticated investor. This isn't, mom and pop. And so you have to be smart. You have to know what you're talking about when you're on the phone with an institutional investor, when you're talking about a stock or whatever it is, and giving him market color. So that's, or you're, helping execute a transaction on the behalf of the bank, right? You're selling a deal. Okay. So Morgan Stanley wants to sell an IPO of Google or whatever it was at the time. And I'm, talking to my buy side counterpart, getting indications of interest about like what he wants, what his allocation or of interest is on that deal. And that's really the job in sales. So you're advising in some capacity, or you're helping execute a transaction on behalf of the bank, or you're just helping execute a transaction day to day. You're pitching a stock, he's buying it through your desk, right? As a salesperson. Now, if you're that's in equities. In fixed income, it's different. You're actually the role in equities is broken down to two roles. There's this research salesperson and the sales trader. The sales trader is a transaction guy. The research sales guy is more like the big picture account manager type. Whereas fixed income, you're taking the orders, right? And you're the account manager. But nonetheless, you're acting in that advisory capacity. So that's the role in sales. Trading, you're doing one of two things. You're either making a market in some type of security, whether it's a bond or a stock or whatever it is, meaning you're making a price, a bid and an offer, right? Where a client can buy or sell, and this client is coming into you and saying, okay, I'll buy it here, right? That's your job as a trader, to make a market. So you have to understand risk. Like, because what happens is like, okay, I want to sell you XYZ, right? I want to sell you, 10,000 shares of Texas Instruments. You're like, okay, I'll make a market here. And next thing you know, you make a market here, and Texas Instruments starts tanking because this guy had a piece of information. So that's the risk you're taking as a trader in terms of being a market maker. The other part of role of being a trader is you're taking risk on behalf of the bank, or what's referred to as proprietary trading, right? So, that's changed post the financial crisis. I think, traders, buy side traders take less risk on behalf of the bank. There's less proprietary trading. It still goes on, certainly.
Makes sense.
But less so than it used to be. Really, it's more of a market making role than it was in the past, right? It used to be, particularly like if you look at like a fixed income bond trader, he would hold a bunch of bonds on inventory. He would have his own book, kind of managing his own portfolio of bonds, trying to make money in his book on behalf of the bank, or he's making a market in bonds, trying to create liquidity for the client.
Gotcha.
But there's less of the risk taking part of it. So that's really what sales and trading is, right? It's you're the liaison between the buy side client and the investment bank, either in a trading capacity or in a sales capacity, so it's either an advisory capacity or a market making capacity. And that's really how to think of the best way to think about it.
Gotcha. So you just threw a ton at this, and I want to dissect it a little bit more, but just dumb it down for me one more time. In one sentence, what is sales and trading?
Sales and trading is you are the liaison between the buy-side investor and the investment bank that you are working for. So you are either in sales or in trading. And that's it. So as a salesperson, it's advisory. Trading, you're making a market for those buy-side clients.
Gotcha. Okay. And so who are these clients actually? Like, are they mutual funds? Are they hedge funds? Are they individual, high net worth individuals? Like, what's the client?
No, so it's all institutional. It's all institutional money. It's all hedge funds, mutual funds, pension funds. So you're as an institutional salesperson, or as whatever it is. If Morgan Stanley, their equity sales and trading business, the clients are mutual funds and hedge funds, right?
Uh-huh.
Long only money and hedge fund money, right? It's all
Mhm.
institutional investors, right? So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. And so what are some of the misconceptions that people have about sales and trading? Because it's a little bit of an opaque environment where people don't know too much about it. And so what are the misconceptions people have about sales and trading?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's misconceptions, but as much, yeah, I think you said it right. I mean, I think it's like it's sort of an esoteric career path in a way. Like
Mhm.
you could have to sort of talk to people in the industry before you kind of figure out what it is.
Uh-huh.
And So yeah, I think it requires a little bit of education. Like how did I learn about it? I had a couple of friends who had gotten into sales and trading, and
Uh-huh.
they seemed to they seem to be doing well and they like the job. So that's how I found about it and sort of educated myself on the subject matter. But it wasn't even really until I got to business school that I really got to learn more about it by going on these informational interviews and things of that nature. So yeah, I think the is there a misconception about it? I wouldn't say that's as much the case as I think that it's just not that well known, as you said. The
Uh-huh.
one thing I would say that maybe is a fear that's maybe commonly misplaced is that yeah, there's always a concern about technology displacing people, right? And as
Uh-huh.
more so today, obviously, with things like AI, are you going to have a large language model covering you as a as a hedge fund client, right? Rather than a human being. But that was the same fear 20 years ago. It really was. And like so, the role, like I would say, particularly even in institutional sales, the role 40 years ago was the only way that they could get like real time information from your research department as an institutional as a buy side client was to talk to the institutional sales guy, right? He was like, okay, my
Uh-huh.
guy just came out with a report, we're upgrading this stock. Then the fax machine came along, and that kind of changed everything
Uh-huh.
because you could fax the reports to them. And then email came along, and so the client had the information before you did, right? So, nonetheless, it didn't matter. Like you still provided value by providing color around an analyst call and putting that into context. What are your other clients doing? Like just helping to contextualize information. The value of the institutional person. It changed a little, but there's still a lot of value there. And to this day, there's still a lot of value. Like I get covered. I'm covered by institutional salespeople, and I read what they
Uh-huh.
say all the time, right? And um, so yeah, I don't think it's going away. I think. Yeah, that's always the concern. I think with any job, I think nowadays there's so much concerns about every job going away. But at the end of the day, you can't. There's so many nuances in terms of learning this business and understanding, what goes on in the market day to day. That there's still a ton of value that these people provide, and frankly, it hasn't changed in 2 years since or 3 years since ChatGPT was developed. And it's
Uh-huh.
it has evolved in 20-25 years, but it's not it's still very much a role that's valued. And there are some very high paying specialized roles within sales and trading. So yeah, I would say that's it's not a misconception, but yeah, I think that's the one thing
Uh-huh.
that I think is a little bit of a misplaced fear.
Yeah. Well, and so basically that idea that AI is going to take away everything, maybe not with sales and trading, and still a good place to build your career. But one thing I did want to return to is this idea that it's very opaque. And so you mentioned that in order to get into sales and
Yes.
trading, like you had to have friends who knew about sales and trading. And
Yeah.
that honestly is like
Yeah.
the reason that I'm so excited to be at Wall Street Mastermind is because what we're doing here is we're trying to take some of these opaque finance industries like investment banking and sales and trading, equity research, private equity, and just like make
Yeah.
it a little bit clearer for how to actually get into them. And so tell
Yeah.
me a little bit
Yeah.
about like what you need to know to get a job into sales and trading, because you've obviously coached a number of students. You're very effective at helping people break into
Yeah.
the industry. Like, what do you need to know?
Yeah. Look, I think the most challenging thing with sales and trading is yes, you can't, even if you look it up on the internet, right?
Hmm.
It's hard to kind of really understand what it is, right? And like you
Hmm.
kind of almost have to, you have
Yeah.
to talk to someone who's in the industry a lot, right, to kind of really get it, right? Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, I think I think that's really the challenge is like it's hard to learn about it because
Hmm.
it's opaque and I think the best way, and look, I always say this, like the difficulty is like what they're really looking for, like when you go on these interviews, right? The two things they're really looking for in a candidate um is a general like level of enthusiasm for wanting to do the role. And they're like, well, how do you convey that? Well, you convey that by kind of understanding it, right? Okay, like do you know what that
Hmm.
guy does that you're talking to, right? Who's interviewing you? And if you've done the legwork and if you've done your homework and if you talk to people, if you network, you know that. The second thing is a passion for markets in general. Like you have to convey that you're really interested in this stuff. Because at the end of the day, that's really what separates people there. Like the people kind of came
Hmm.
in and just kind of liked this, thought that sounded good, and they never really developed that passion for it. That those are the
Yeah.
people that by year three they're kind of going by the wayside, where the other guys
Hmm.
are really thriving. So
Hmm.
those are two things they're looking for, right? It's a general like understanding of what they do, and it's a passion for the market. So I think the
Hmm.
understanding to do what they do can be done with legwork, and like having those
Hmm.
conversations with people and really kind
Hmm.
of digging into what's in the business, what are the roles in the business, what are the desks in the
Yep.
business, that kind of thing. And
Hmm.
the other one is learning about markets and developing a basic level of fluency in the language of markets, right?
Hmm.
When you're in sort of your summer intern interviews or your full time interviews, right?
Hmm.
And that's hard to do. So like that's really what I kind of look to do when I try to prepare people, right? Is to like
Hmm.
kind of get good at those two things, right? Develop
Yeah.
that base level of
Yeah. Yeah.
fluency and develop an understanding of the business, right?
Yeah.
Um,
So you have to know
so
what it
because I think
is,
with
and you also have to. Sorry, go for it. Go for it.
no, I was just saying the base level of fluency. I think that the difficulty of that, is that you're walking in halfway through a movie, right?
Hmm.
I love to use that analogy because that's really what it's like. You walk in, you have no idea what's going on. All these people are talking about all these things that have happened, and like all of a sudden, so it takes a long time. You're like, okay, oh, here's what's happening in the movie. Now I get it, right? That takes like a year, right? And then, but
Hmm.
my goal is to kind of get you closer to like at least being comfortable having a conversation about the movie, right? So,
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Love that. And so we've talked a little bit about some of the things that you need to know prior to getting into the industry. And you also hinted at some of the things you need to know to be successful. And so going back to something you said at the very beginning, you were saying that like within a 3-year period, there's a clear divergence in the quality of people in sales and trading and the people who are going to be successful and the people who are not. And so first off, why 3 years? And second off, what are the factors that drive that divergence?
Um, why 3 years? Because I think 3 years is really when you start to get like real responsibility, right?
Hmm.
You're covering a big account by yourself, right?
Hmm.
Up until that point, you're if you're a salesperson or you're a trader, um, like as a trader, you're kind of learning the ropes. You're working with somebody else as like a guy under him, right? You're kind of
Hmm.
learning how to do that job the first couple of years. And so they don't really figure out whether you're good at it or not. They
Yeah.
just know that you work hard and you come in. And same thing with a salesperson. Like you don't really like, they kind of get a sense for like how you are with clients, but like whether can you really handle the job? Are you a savvy
Hmm.
stock guy? Are you, good at like, are you good at getting people to do things? Like that doesn't really kind of play out until year three, right? It's really like it's a
Hmm.
functional level of responsibility you get. And then they realize, okay, this guy really can't do it, or they can, right? Or this guy's great, right?
Hmm.
And you start to see that.
Hmm.
So,
Yep. Okay,
I
gotcha.
would say
So
that's
that
the
makes sense in terms of the why and the how. And so we talked a little bit about like how to be successful and some of these skills that you need, like that you need to have the passion for sales and trading and markets, and you need to have an understanding of it, which is very hard to get, which is why you need either a coach or some friend in the industry or something like Wall Street Mastermind to help you get that understanding of the industry. So we've talked about the how. Let's talk about the why now. And so for you, it was a lot about the like the competition, the intellectualism, like loving the markets, obviously the money. But
yeah.
if you had to pitch a student today on like choosing between any of those areas within the pantheon of finance that you were mentioning, why would someone want to choose sales and trading specifically?
Yeah, I think it goes back to do you want to be like closest to the action? Do you want to get
Mhm.
that instant gratification and instant feedback? If that's an environment that you thrive in, you will do very well, right? If
Mhm.
you're, if you, and it's about the pace and it's about the instant feedback, right? It's really
Mhm.
those two things. I think that's the real difference.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So if that's your thing, then yeah, I think that's the why, right? Um,
Hmm. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, so the
if
instant
that helps.
gratification, the ability to exist at a fast pace, to be right at that center of the action. And that does sound exciting. Like it
Yes.
sounds really thrilling, really exhausting in some ways, but thrilling too.